Let me start first by thanking our guests for joining our meeting. We have Professor Dr. Mahmoud Hanafy, who is a professor of marine science at the Canal University, Suez Canal University. We have as well Christoph Wessling from the BTU Cottbus in Germany. And hopefully a couple of others will join us later. Myself is Nabil ElHady, and I'm joined by ElHabashy and Ahmed ElAdawy, and we are, the three of us are teaching this class. I will do a brief presentation about what we are doing. And I always take the opportunity to just reflect on what we are really doing and elaborate a little bit on the questions that we are raising. So what we are doing is mainly rethinking the tourism in Qusayr, in particular in relation to the water system. And what we did at the first of this class, we had a discussion and we came up with a specific understanding of a city, that it is really a continuum where the natural system is the original condition, and then history would be the accumulated layers that leads to present conditions. And we were interested in tourism in Qusayr, in particular for many reasons, but one of them is these unprecedented challenges that the IPCC report pointed to last December, which was warning that Egypt, and particularly tourism in the Red Sea, is really facing a grave challenge and a very serious potential very serious decline by the end of this century, due to being heavily dependent on coral reef diving and snorkeling and whatever activities. And I believe the scenarios, the four scenarios that were presented by the IPCC team was pointing to that we might be witnessing the worst case scenario. The recording of CO2 emission concentrations a couple of days ago were even higher than what was expected in the worst case scenario. So what we did in relation to understanding a city as a continuum where natural system as the origin is, in some sense, the need of revisiting the city. What is the city and what is the city boundaries? What is the prime conditions for the city? And we are using the water system wadis and areas as the main defining boundaries for the land part of this marine ecosystem. Of course, we are lacking some data regarding the sea itself, but hopefully in the future we will get more data in this regard. What I did here is simply trying to imagine or understand a little bit more the natural water system in Qusayr. As shown in this diagram, the natural water system in Qusayr is having or producing yearly a very limited amount of fresh water that can support human life, but it is very vital for the marine ecosystem. Given this basic condition that supports only very limited number of possible human life, the human intervention that led to expansion and urbanization in Qusayr required water. So production of water, whether through desalination or bringing freshwater tubes into the city. And the issue is not simply the production of water, fresh water, but the discharge and the wastewater like brine and domestic waste that is discharged into the ground aquifer and eventually would go back into the sea. This is a significant human impact into the marine ecosystem in this area and definitely needs to be rethought if we are to allow and support the marine system here to continue into the future. This is another diagram that would show the impact, the human population, the population of city of Qusair since we started counting. That was back in the 19th century. But what this graph is showing is the significant drop of population as a result of the phosphate company stopping production. This is, we estimated a loss of roughly between 7,000 and 11,000 persons due to the stop of this industrial production. Then what we are doing is now our way of understanding the city is human settlement, a human being, and at the interface with the marine ecology. So this is an interface of human settlement and a natural system. And this interface is manifested in particularly three main areas in Qusair. One of them is a little bit north of the city, around Wadi al-Qusair al-Qadim, which is very near to Movenpick area and the Flamenco and Radisson area, which is the main concentration of tourism in Qusair. The second part is the phosphate company site, which the government and GOPB plans are indicating serious intention to transform the site into a touristic site. Here you have again an interface between human activities and marine ecology. Of course, you have decades of discharge of phosphate waste into the marine ecology with an impact. I'm not sure if it is really and properly documented and assessed. The third part is the south of the city of Qusair, near the main Wadi al-Ambagi. And this is where the Fanadir resort, now is Sea Hug Resort, that was the first to start being built as a tourist resort. And this is very near to some informal area, but as well to the historic part of the city. And here it's very clear, not simply human interface with the marine ecology, but as well the tourism with the community. So this is another situation that we are very, very interested in. Finally, the question that are at the core of our class has to do with this idea of how to transform tourism activities into a sustainable activity, into an activities that can really be within this green area that does not really infringe on the ecological boundaries. So this is one issue, how to transform the existing tourism into being more sustainable ones. The other one has to do with the if we are if we are now on a danger of a significant impact by tourism industry into the marine ecology, then if we are to add more activities in this area, what type of those activities that would keep population within, again, this green zone of providing the basic necessities for people without not really getting into lacking some necessities, and as well not really infringing on the ecological ceiling. So the two questions that we are asking ourselves is how to transform existing tourism into more sustainable, and what the other question is, what type of activities that would allow the city population, people living there, to thrive. As thriving here is, in a way, an alternative for development, and thriving, there is a built-in assumption that whatever activities you do, you cannot really, you will not infringe into, or you are not really overshooting the ecological ceilings. So those are the two main questions that we are asking. And hopefully the teams would, in their respective areas, would focus and try to discuss and show us whatever they have done through the class until now, and their proposals in tackling the existing situation. So I'm done with the brief presentation. Professor Dr. Tarek Wafik just joined us. Professor Dr. Tarek Wafik is Professor of Urban Planning at Cairo University. Thank you, Doctor, for coming.
Hello, everyone. So our group, we will talk about investigation for the resorts area and the historic core of Qussair. I am Noor Qadir, and my colleagues...
from Kurdistan.
Yes, from Kurdistan region of Iraq.
Yeah.
And my colleagues will also introduce themselves. Priya?
Yes. This is Sakya Priya. I'm from India.
Hey, this is Mirna. My name is Mirna Ashraf. I'm from Alexandria, and I studied from Alexandria University, and it's a pleasure seeing you all again today.
Okay. First, we are trying to understand how Qussair is linked to different cities and on international level and on regional level. Right now, we see the Red Sea, the Nile, and this is where Qussair is. The Cairo, the capital, Qussair is linked with capital in terms of a lot of people from Cairo come to Qussair to work in the resort areas. And the major food supply is from Cairo. Around 75% of the food comes from Cairo. And we have a project called Golden Triangle Project, which is in between Kift, Kina, Safaga, and Qussair. The government is trying to develop this region, so that we have more jobs and so that we use the resources in a proper way. So that is how the Safaga, Kina, and Kift are connected. Kift is the closest city on the Nile Valley, which is linked through the Qussair Kift road network. Luxor, Marsa Alam, and Hurghada are the closest international airports that we have. That is how Qussair is connected. And Hamrain is a port. Just it's the closest town to Qussair. It is now a port where we have a lot of phosphate imports and exports happening in this place. And there is a thermal power plant that is going to come up in Hamrawain. Just it's a clean coal project that is proposed in Hamrawain. So this is how the regional network works. Before, as in ancient times, Qusair was linked with Arab countries as well for international transports and all. Okay, I'll just Mirna.
Yeah. Starting by getting more of a zoom in understanding and its administrational boundaries along with ecological boundaries. Okay, Qusair is part of the Red Sea Governorate, and it's like the in the south there is Safaga, and in pardon me, in the north Safaga and the south Marsa Alam. And we try to actually study more about the ecological boundaries and how what are the natural resources are, in other words, the flood, which is located within Qusair, the flash flood areas. We found that we are having four main flash flood courses: Wadi Qusair Qadim, Wadi Al-Ambagi, and Wadi Aswad, and Wadi Zuraib. Even when we try to do a tracking for how the flash flood influenced the water system in Qusair, there were like a variety of beer or well, in other words, located aside to this, which was the old city, and then transmitted to the new city, the historic core nowadays we're having in Qusair. So yeah, so for like we are having Bir Nakhil, and there are like even studies show that they are having some settlements and some sediments also from the people who used to live there, and there are like traces for wells at Bir Nakhil. Dawi is as a mountain, and also found some traces and even a fort for where there used a well. Bir Sayela, Al Hamra, and Maximin, and Bir Al Hamamat finally till Wadi Al Hamamat, 30 kilometers from the city of Qusair, connecting to the Qusair Kift Road. So next, please, Priya. Yeah, so like understanding the city of Qusair in more of a zoom in, like we are talking mainly about the narrative between water infrastructure, heritage, conservation, and memory. In that terms, we are trying to tackle down, or actually to trace, to map how the water system or the water infrastructure influenced Qusair from the ancient ages till nowadays. So in this map, we're trying to sort out how the different layers, like starting by the phosphate mines, which used to be located in Qusair, and even like those are the three ones. This is the first one close to Wadi Qusair Qadim is phosphate mine 22 till 27, and I think and there are like different stories for people who used to live there. And then there's like this Wadi Qusair Qadim having the lagoon and the oldest port, and this is house reef, and one of the house reefs we're having. Also, like we are having another house reef which is located upward in the North Priya. Yeah, so this is like which is close to Hamraouen port, and like in the house reefs normally it's used for diving activities. So this is a threat actually for the site. And then downwards, please, Priya. Yeah, and here we can see Wadi Al-Ambagi, which is like connected to Wadi Qusair Qadim, and then it's close to the historic core and the new part of the city, and like this is the new port of Qusair, and we are having another house reef which is connected to Fanadi Resort. So all as mentioned, all the house reefs are used for diving activities. And those are the phosphate mines, and this is Wadi Al-Aswad, and in the north, in the south, there is Wadi Zuraib. Maybe it will be, yes, okay. So next, please. Yeah, and this section is trying to show how the water is collected between the two heights at different altitudes. we're having like, if we're having 600 meters altitude, then the water is connected as water basin. But the thing that the flash flood is not frequent. And the last flash flood was like in the 80s or the 90s. So it's something like it doesn't like, it's not frequent. So it's not a source of for depending on water, but it's actually a threat. So yeah, this is the location of the historic core compared to the basin of Wadi al-Ambagi. And the altitude here is 400 meters, and the altitude in the historic core, our study area, is 100 meters. So next, please. Yeah, starting by the timeline, studying how the city of Qusair has developed along the ages. I think Koshari is here, or
Yes, Min, I'm here.
yes, okay, so yeah.
Okay. I will just explain about the timeline of the city. Historical records and archaeological excavation have shown that over the last 500 years, there have been harbor facilities which was located 10 kilometers north of Qusair, which is now called Qusair al-Qadim or ancient Qusair. Excavations carried out there during 1979 and 1981. They found like there were several periods, Roman period, that is from 1st century to 4th century AD. During 1st century, a town was established at Qusair al-Qadim, 8 kilometers to north, where excavation in 1971 to 1981 revealed a port that flourished until the 4th century. In this period, the whole region became latticide with the roads linking the mines and ports. These were protected their routes with small forts associated with wells. Then it comes the Ottoman period. Qusair al-Qadim was abandoned until the start of the Fatimid period in the late 10th century. The construction of Ottoman fort being ordered by Sultan Salim, the fort became an important piece of architecture to protect commercial port as well. I can't. Okay. Commercial port as well as the pilgrims route. During mid-18th century, the town was described as a small mud village village built upon the shore. Then it came. Then the French expedition came during 1798 to 1881. It was the time that the police station was built in the city, and this police station is one of the heritage in the city. Then it came like Muhammad Ali and Khedivius in 18,005, and it ruled until 1952. During this time, this city flourished and became a permanent settlement of importance for housing a good harbor. The population of the city grew to start of the 19th century to 6,000 to 8,000 people. From 1952 onwards until 1960s, Qusair was a small village on the Red Sea coast, clustered around number of mosques and shrines. Later, Qusair has been selected for the action plan, became its cultural and natural resources offer a potential for the development of tourism. Unfortunately, the beaches and the corals in the core city has been polluted and destroyed by the shipping. The new development is started in the northern city to emerge tourism. Qusair has a rich historic past, remnants of which can still be spotted around the city. Buildings such as quarantine, shrines, and police stations, forts, and mosques in the core represents Ottoman and Arab heritage. Priya, next slide. Okay. Egypt has one of the growing
Yeah.
tourism industry in the.
Sorry for interruption. Can you speed up a little bit this part, and because actually we want to listen to your potential interventions. Yeah?
Okay. Until the mid 20, I'll just go. Until the mid 20th, mining and shipping and fisheries were the most major industries for the most of the people in the city. During 19th century, about 30,000 pilgrims passed through the city and valley. After the uh, phosphate and mining era finished, the city facilitates the tourist. The city is started converted into tourist city, and hotels and resorts were planned solely since the touristic potential of the city was raised. From 1998, the shift away. Kusai developed like being northern port of the city during the time. Unfortunately, as I told, the beaches and the coral reefs and water was polluted, so they have to shift their tourism to the northern part of the city. Priya, next slide.
You have additional only 5 minutes. Okay.
Okay, Minna, can you please continue?
Yeah, okay. So we, in terms of understanding the city, we try to have different mapping. As mentioned, like Kushari tried to talk about the timeline so we can have a better understanding of the cultural mapping of the city, or which are the main assets and related to the culture. So we are having the main ones are the Qusair Fort, Phosphate Company, the Farran Mosque and the Minaret, the police station, the quarantine, and the church. So along that, from the quarantine to the historic core, we're having a narrative between different assets, starting by Movenpick Resort, the Radisson Blue. And like one of the interesting things that we are having a Sea Moon, a hotel, which was like a hotel facing the desert side of the city. We are having also the Ottoman fort. We're having a historic center of Qusair, the police station, the Qusair Hotel also within but the Qusair Hotel is facing the seaside. So we're having different types of hotels, one facing the desert, and the other is facing the sea, which is like a quite interesting challenge or like potential for the tourist. And even we're having the church and the phosphate company. So next, please.
Okay, I'll take over from here. To understand the water system in Qusair, right now we don't have much water. So most of the water comes from the Safaga. There's a line from Nile River, which comes from Nile to Safaga and from Safaga to Qusair. Most of the citizens of the Qusair they get water from this line, and the other part of the system is desalination plants. The Qusair city itself has a desalination plant which is served for the citizens of the Qusair. And the resorts, on the other hand, they have two different desalination plants. The Radisson and the Movenpick has one, and Flamenco has one. So the desalination plant is usually they get the water from the groundwater, and they process the water and they get potable water. And during this process, a lot of brine water is generated, which is not good for the environment, and that is dumped back into the water into the ground, usually deeper than the groundwater. And in the resorts itself, the water is used for domestic purpose, for the pools and the landscape. And there is the wastewater, that the grey water that is generated from the resorts. It is usually treated, and the treated water is used for the landscaping, and the wastewater is again transported back into sewage lines.
Yeah, so but for the water system analysis for the resorts, we are having each resort serves around 12,000 tourists per month, and as Priya mentioned, they are dependent on the desalination plant. But the problem that they produce brine water 65% more than the fresh water which is produced. So this is like a crisis. Then next, please, Priya. And this it shows the irrigation or the consumption for each resort in numbers, like the total water consumption for Movenpick is 250 cubic meter, Flamenco 160, and Red and Blue 240 cubic meter. And these graphs are for the domestic usage by the tourists. So coming, yeah, okay. So next, please. Yeah, so understanding more about the wells or coming back to getting back to history. We try to investigate from the readings and the resources where are the wells in Qussair and the desalination plant. So we are having from the readings, we found that there used to be wells connected to Wadi Qussair Qadim, aside to the flash flood of Wadi Qussair flash flood course. And even we are having 3 in the historic core. One was located in the fort, and one was located quite close to the desalination plant. And the other one was located close to Wadi al-Ambagi. So those are the locations, the red ones for the beer or the wells, and the other ones for the desalination plants, for the main desalination plant of the city, and the other one for the resort that we are having too. Next, please. So by this map, we are trying to actually do a mapping of the water system in Qussair in terms of proposing our tour or our narrative between the Qussair Qadim and the new Qussair. So this is a water system in the historic core. We are having the desalination plant. The water comes from Safaga 10% and from the desalination plant 90%. And the water they get from wells. They don't get it from the sea. And as Priya mentioned, how the water cycle goes. Please, next. Yeah, Noor, would you please speak about this?
Sure. What's important here to mention is that the historic core itself is consisting of more than 52% of it are of void, and this is because of many buildings are demolished in the historic core, and also the buildings in the historic core are mostly historic buildings from different periods of history, which makes it very interesting place for tourists to come and visit, because 60% of the buildings are of historic buildings. And a very few number of the buildings are listed, about 1% of the buildings. Next slide, Priya. Well, in terms of the height of the buildings, almost more than 86% of the buildings are of a uniform height between 1 to 2 floor buildings, and very few buildings are more than 3 floors, about 1% of the buildings. Then there are the function division in the historic core are mostly consisted of residential buildings, about 56% and more. And about 4% are of mixed use, and then only 0.1% are left for a healthcare, and 31% are vacant and abandoned plots.
Okay,
then
great.
there are the building conditions.
2 minutes, Yanur. 2 minutes. You have left 2 minutes, ya Jama'ah. You already surpassed your time.
Okay, then we can go to the next slide. As the building conditions in the historic core are mostly 20% are of ruined structures, and dilapidated structures are almost 30%. You can go to the next slide, Priya.
Yeah, so in these terms, when we try to investigate more about the geology of the city, we're having close to the mines, we're having this local material, which is sandstone and old coral reefs, and the buildings of the Ottoman period are produced from the material called hokak, which is a combination between reddish and yellowish sandstone. So it can be used for the locals to have their own to have their own cladings, and this is adapting a vernacular building technique, a potential. So because this is a local resource, and some of the buildings there are still existing using this material. So next, please. Yeah, in terms of, so summing up all the data we had for COSER and the problems, we had a vicious cycle for the locals, which is can be divided into four main parts. The low rates of education on COSER, the low rates of labor, the lack of water infrastructure, and like aside to this, we're having an increase in population coming from outside to work in the tourism sector, and they are not from the locals. So how we can just solve this vicious cycle? For the low rates of education, we are thinking of proposing education to work to understand and to work for the vernacular building technique, so they are having their own understanding of their local material. So this will definitely work for increasing the labor from the locals, and this like for the lack of water infrastructure, the local resources, and like it's having a narrative between the history and the present. And for the increased population, we can just have a reuse for the existing structures within the historic core and even extension in the desert side. So next, please, for the second vicious cycle.
You need to wrap up your presentation now. You need to wrap up your presentation, Yamarna.
Okay, I'll just sum up soon with the vicious cycle of the tourism. So we are trying to promote tourism in this sector, but the problem is the more the tourism, more the water consumption, and the more the water consumption, and the more the brine, and the more the environment gets polluted, the coral reefs get depleted. So this is a problem that we have with the tourism right now. For the SWOT, we see the corals and the historic layer and the existing tourism as a strength. But we have opportunities to develop tourism in this place, like the excavation site and the old wells and the new port and the old port of the COSER and the Corniche along the beach in the historic core. We see it as an opportunity to develop more cultural tourism in the place. And weaknesses is disconnected public spaces and ineffective development regulations, and dilapidated historic core is what we see as a weakness, and that led to coral depletion and loss of heritage value due to no proper care. So these are the threats that we see right now, and these are the challenges that we need to address.
Yeah, so next for the vision, we are trying to, in terms of adopting sustainable tourism, using socio-economic development. So we are tackling cultural integrity and labor productivity. So we are trying to have a reorientation of urban protocols and alternative scenarios around infrastructure, resources, and public spaces within the city. So in this logic, we are trying to do some historical preservation using vernacular techniques. So next, please. Yeah, so this is like a guideline map or a schematic idea of how the thing will go, starting from COSER Qadim till this site of the new COSER, and having like this cycle and these buckets, which are the spaces within the interface between the desert side and the seaside. And as mentioned before, for the GOPP plan, they are having an idea of having a promenade within, and this is the priority for the seaside intervention. The next, please, for the strategy.
Okay, so the strategies that we're looking at is the first one to create different kinds of sustainable tourism and to create a loop within the Al-Qadim region and the new and the historic core of the city. That is one. And the other thing is connecting the old and the new heritage of the city. And the third one is the alternative techniques to generate water. As we see, water is one of the biggest problems that we face, which is depleting the nature. So that is another strategy. And to improve the transportation system within the system to connect different hotspots, that is how we want to increase the number of footfalls in the historic core. And the fifth one is upgrading the historic core by giving incentives to the owners. I think there's a need for upgrading the historic core as most of the structures are dilapidated. So these are the strategies that we're looking at. And for tourism in COSER, we have different kinds of tourism activities that are happening right now, like diving and cultural tourism and cruising and safari, and we are promoting museum industry in the COSER Al-Qadim region where we have excavation sites. So we are trying to propose a museum within the region and an interpretation center. So this is the new kind of tourism that we're trying to incorporate in the existing tourism, and this kind of tourism doesn't really deplete resources much when compared to the resort areas and all.
And right now, the Flamenco, Movenpick, and the Radisson are quite fragmented paths in the resort areas. There's not much of a connection between these spaces. The Qussair Al-Qadim excavation site as a museum would consolidate this resort areas. And the old fort that we see here right now, it's the old fort which served as one of the major trading hubs back then. And the new fort we have in the historic coast. So we're trying to connect these through cruising, so that there's a complete loop, as in people would start the journey from here, have a look at the excavation site, go to the historic core, look at the places there, and then they travel back to the old port through cruising. So this is how we are trying to see Qussair in tourism in Qussair. For the tourism, so by 2030, the government of Egypt is trying to increase the hotel capacities in each in Egypt. So how it's going to change is what we are trying to see here. By 2030, so there's going to be a surge of tourists coming. If we are not changing anything within the tourism right now, with regards to the desalination and the water and the footfall of the tourists and all, the impact is going to be 2.64 times the impact right now it is on marine life, and that is a huge amount which we cannot afford. So we are proposing different strategies for this. For the water itself, we are proposing carousels. It's a process, it's a desalination process which is quite sustainable when compared to the desalination process itself. Okay, this is one of the strategies. And for the Qussair Al-Qadim excavation site, so this is the Qussair Al-Qadim excavation site, and this is the lake which is formed due to the flash floods, and it is quite seasonal. It's not a very frequent activity that happens as in the flash floods, but when it happens, because of the flash floods, the lake is filled, and we have the ruins here. So we are trying to propose steps. The white path that you see are the steps. You can also see it in the section. The steps would act like a barrier to the ruins from the lake, and it would also be a pause point for the tourists to sit and relax, have a look at the lake, and also to enjoy the ruins as well. And on the other side of the road, we are proposing the interpretation center. You can see it in the section as well. So the people would get down at the old port. They would go to the interpretation center, buy
understood.
tickets.
This is the last slide or not?
No, we still have more.
Okay, just show us, click.
Okay, so this is how we are envisioning the ruins to be, as in these are the ruins and the structure above it.
Okay.
Mirna?
Yeah, and this is for the phases, like we are having like a vision for Qussair 2030, and this is like how the thing will go, aside to the site of the intervention area Qussair Qadim, and then the other like history, which is like it's mainly for its own resources, which is the vernacular building techniques and the old water infrastructure, which the journey had been made and established, and then that curatorial planning of the museum, which will have an interpretation for how the thing went in the Qussair. And like, this is like the phase. If you want to go through it, it's fine. Okay, I think. Yeah, so this is so far for our presentation. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you for the presentation, and you only took more than 10 minutes. But anyway, I would like to welcome Mr. Hossam Helmy, who joined us while you were presenting. Hossam Helmy is the founder and CEO of Red Sea Diving Safari. We were also joined by Professor Dr. Alaa ElHabashy, who is the head of architecture department at Cairo University. And if the guests wouldn't really mind, I would like to give Professor Dr. Mahmoud Hanafy first the talk.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Dr. Tarek. It's nice to see you after this very long time. And Mr. Hossam Helmy, of course. Just I'm not going in deep in the planning. I'm actually going about from my experience about the environment and the development in the Red Sea. Actually, what happened in the Red Sea during the last 3 decades is you have to look to have for the lesson learned from the time of development. I'm talking in general, but I think this is very, very important. When we started development, especially in tourism, it was completely based on quantity rather than quality. You know, all of our indicators was based on the number of hotels, number of touristic rooms, number of tourists to the area, rather than the carrying capacity of the environment. It's never taken as one of the criteria in our plan when we are, deciding for, a sustainable development. So we ended with this mass, very intensive development in many areas, and of course, overuse of the resources. What I mean by overuse, we have in the Red Sea very limited resources, not that huge in terms of productivity and in terms of quantity also. If we are talking about coral reef, for example, in terms of area, it's ranged between maximum 300 to 400 square kilometers, which represent less than 0.0001% of the sea area. Other area of the seas, in terms of water fertility, is very, very limited. I'm not talking marine biological, going in deep in this. But the Red Sea is a wood sea, actually, except some areas or some ecosystems or habitat like coral reef. And this is very, very limited resources. For example, and I think my friend Dr. Mr. Hossam, he can give a lot about this. We have not more than 260 diving sites along the Red Sea, with this. While the number of dives along the Red Sea is ranged between 6 million to 9 million. Sustainable diving, which is the number of dives per reef per year, is ranged between 5,000 to 22,000. So we are using these resources very intensively, over and overuse. If we are talking about fisheries, it's the same. So this is the type of development we ended with, which is mostly based on quantity rather than quality. So it's very nice to attend this conference, to see something, some sort of planning, true planning for an ancient city like this. Our problem also in planning is only focus on the shoreline. Shoreline, all of our work, when we started to think about proper or sustainable development, sustainable planning for the Red Sea, we are focused only on the shoreline. And I would like to say that between the shoreline and the Nile Valley is 200 kilometers with just free land, with more treasures, more resources, natural resources, in terms of mining and all of this. So I think we have to reconsider about this. Also to talk about Qusair only as an ancient city. When we are talking about sectors or some sort of industry, focusing only on tourism is also, we have to survey the other resources close to Qusair area. Because Qusair, from the ancient time, from my opinion, is started or developed based on phosphate production. So mining is a historical industry in the area. So this is what I would like to say. This I have very limited time actually, because after 5 minutes I have another conference call. But I think somebody talking about water and discharging, and this is a very good point. We have in the Red Sea, Egyptian Red Sea, a zero discharge sea until this moment. No discharge except some bright water with a certain restriction. So I don't think that even wastewater, if it's me or I understand something like this, if you are talking about wastewater, Red Sea is still a zero discharge. So I would like to continue. Actually, this is very, very good discussion, and I learned a lot.
Dr. Mahmoud Hanafy. Dr.
Yes. Yes.
I'm Tarek Wafik, and I was Saeed.
I'm
very happy to hear your voice.
I'm really, yeah. I'm very, very happy to see you, Dr.
Inshallah.
Okay. And Mr. Hossam also. And Mr. Hossam is very familiar with the tourism and reefs and, you know,
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Hanafy, for your insights and comments. I think they're very valuable and hopefully we'll consider. And I will invite whoever from our distinguished guests actually would like to start commenting. Please go ahead. Dr. Tarek, would you?
Yes, I'm ready if it's okay.
Please go ahead.
Okay, and just before I start, I'll give also a salute and for Captain Hossam Helmy, Hossam Helmy, because we, for a certain time, few years ago, I mean, we were in this project of the sustainable development of Red Sea, and it was a very interesting experience that need to be revisited in a way or another. Okay. As I understand, the main issue here that we are addressing the issue of sustainable development.
Yes.
In COSAIR, that's right, and in general, but I think there's a certain focus in water sensitivity. That's right.
Yes.
Okay. In fact, I'm not exaggerating, but really the presentation, the data, the depths, the details, the comprehensiveness, dealing with all the layer of the past and present, very, very interesting. And it expanded. Some effort has been expanded beyond the original objective or circle, but it's an added value. But let us, my comment about the issue of water sensitivity specifically, it's very good to get this data and these conclusions and move into the strategy or the future development. But I think we need a kind of overarching concept or a paradigm to think within it. So we cannot bring all this data, but don't make it functional to the point. In this respect, especially water sensitivity, I think we have a very complicated system of natural hydrological system, ecosystem, tourism, community, heritage, mining supply chains, industry, ports, infrastructure, whatever, and they are well covered. But I think we should handle all this data, especially when we are looking for the future, under the paradigm of two interacting concepts. The first concept, we have to be well aware of the carrying capacity of the local ecosystem, and this is, I think, Dr. Mahmoud Hanafy has focused on. He says that no discharge. Of course, there is a possibility for some. So we have to have a clear understanding of what is the carrying capacity of the local ecosystem, considering water and considering, all other subsystems also. The other intervening concept is, when we think for the future, we have to think of the total management concept, supply management. I'm speaking about the water right now. Supply management, either it's natural from floods or whatever, or coming from other places, imported. And demand management, how can we control the demand process? And the quality management. These three should be in interaction with the carrying capacity. So we tailor the supply management, the demand management, the quality management, in interaction with what is carrying the limits of our carrying capacity, the ecosystem carrying capacity. So everything is controlled, is guided, is calculated within this concept. That's right. When we speak about the supply management, it is matter of the number of hotel rooms. That's right. Or it's the matter of that we turn all this tourism to eco-lodges and very deep environmental sensitive tourism. Or not. That's right. So it's this matter, of controlling. I don't want to take much time, maybe later if it's finished, But this is my quick comment. There's another comment, sorry, that I think if we go deep with the water sensitivity issue, I think we need a kind of computer modeling to the natural hydrological cycles and the infrastructure, and so we can have a water system modeling, very simple, just to be aware of what is the exact and real problems that we can handle and make the supply demand quality management within the limits of carrying capacity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor.
Okay.
So, however, yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Tarek. So, whoever want to, from our guests, I'm not sure, Mr. Hossam is here, or Mr. Hossam? Not sure. So, Christoph, would you like to, or Dr. Alaa, whoever?
So I'm here.
Yes.
Yeah, very good. So, Noor, Preya, Mirna, and Kushali, thank you very much for the presentation. And I have the impression that the analysis is very deep, qualified, and that you really get into. And also for me, your vision and the goals are quite clear. Of course, at the end, your presentation was quite fast, so the analysis we could follow quite good, but with the concept, I don't know if I already got everything. But for me now, the main point is to come to the project and to the measures, and there with a challenge to bring this different needs and goals together. So social needs, economic needs, and of course also the spatial integration. So how your project, your measures could be integrated into the existing landscape and urban fabric. There I just recognize some, your strategic approach and some first sketches. So there I would be really interested in. And when you go to this part now, maybe then you will find some further questions you have to answer connected to your analysis. But I would propose that it would be a good benefit if you go into the measures and the projects as soon as possible and go there much deeper.
Thank you.
Yeah. And of course, it's a pleasure to listen to all of you and to see also some of you.
Good to see you as well. So, Dr. Alaa, would you?
Yes, Dr. Nabil, thank you very much. I'm not sure if I'm heard, but very happy to get into this meeting and to see everybody, especially Christoph on the other part of the world. And I'm very glad also to see the presentation, which also gives a hint on the amount of work that has been done this semester. Thanks to everybody in Cairo University. I'm sorry that I joined quite right in the middle of the presentation, so I didn't catch that much. However, I've seen the sketches and the vision that is developed. So my only comment, which I've actually written it here as well in my in the chat, I'm not sure if it's recorded, I've seen by everybody, is basically I'm seeing that yes, there is I'm sure a focus on the historic urban landscape, but still the natural setting, the natural landscape is not still given its weight, especially in relation to the desert and specifically the valley, which actually is the raison d'etre of the town, with all of the trading going through, but also with all of the industries that was interconnected with the valley, such as the huge mine, the phosphate mine, that is quite a picturesque site that can be also an additional attribute to the value of the site.
Okay, thank you. May, would you like a comment, May, or we ask students to respond, please?
I just would like to make a clarification. Hello, everyone. First of all, good morning. This is May ElHabashy. Concerning our colleagues who joined a bit late, the students were given briefs related to specific zones and specific themes in the city as a whole. So the current presentation is focusing on the Qusayr al-Qadim and the historic city of Qusayr, and linking it to the resorts in the north section of Qusayr. You find that the later presentations, one of them will focus on the southern resort of Fanadir and the wadis around and the informal area there, and the third one will focus on the phosphate factory. And so each one of the teams was given a specific scope and asked to relate the sort of the city as a continuum in terms of its history and also its ecological setting and the current activities, etc., and to come up with an integrated strategy to sort of transform Qusayr into a thriving city, but at the same time to make sure that it does not deplete its resources. I just want to make that clarification for the colleagues who.
Can I have a small comment, Doctor?
Yeah, please, Asmaa.
Yes, I'm Asmaa Ibrahim. I'm from the coordination team and instructor in the double master program, and I'm very pleased, of course, to have you all. And thank you, Dr. Nabil, for inviting these all special guests. Thank you very much for your presentations, Myrna, Kuchali, Priya, and Noor. I agree with Christoph that you went very quickly through the strategy and the approach, but I just grabbed something that is really, I think from my point of view, is really significant, which is the social responsibility. That you are talking about the water system, the ecosystem, and the tourism activities and so on, but you did mention the community development dimension, and that you will be focusing this, as Dr. Mai just said, in an integrative strategy somehow. So I would really like urge you in your final presentation to really link this kind of community development and how the community will respond to all the activities that you will be proposing through your different strategies, because these are the real beneficiaries and these are the main target groups in the whole strategy you are proposing. And thank you so much.
Thank you. So would you like guys to respond to the comments?
Yes.
Briefly, yes, briefly. Yeah.
Okay, thank you everyone for your comments. But somebody talked about the carrying capacity of the ecosystem. I think that was really interesting to have a look at. But we don't really understand how much the ecosystem can take. The exact numbers. I think that is a problem that we really need to address. I'm not really clear on that part. I understand the concept of the ecosystem's capacity and all, but the numbers is what we are facing the problem with. And the other suggestion was the computer modeling. I think that's very apt. That is how we can really control our impacts and assessment of our interventions. That was one. For Dr. Asmaa, I think for the next time we will really talk about the community development and all. I think we had few thoughts in our mind, but we couldn't present this time because of the time constraint. And sorry for the messy presentation. We couldn't manage the time properly. And yeah, that is all. And it's very good to see you, Christoph, as well.
Okay, Myrna?
Yeah, in terms of the carrying capacity of the water, I think it was within our presentation that we mentioned the capacity of the water within the resorts. And the problem now, the capacity of the water, they are having only 1,000 meter cubic per day. So this is like the capacity nowadays for the locals. yeah, maybe for the proposal, we didn't actually come up with a proposal or a measure how we can obtain water. So this is the missing part, but we are having the amounts and the quantities of the existing situation.
No, yeah, Merna, you misunderstood the carrying capacity of coral reef or the natural water system in terms of how much he can cope with specific human activities or discharge of brine or whatever. This is what is meant by the carrying capacity of ecosystem. Huh? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. 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 Thank you so much all for your comments. Like, we will take it deeper for the projects. I think the next phase is for the projects and measures. So yeah, we will like build on the analysis we made so far. Thank you so much all.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Hope you are all doing well in these trying circumstances. We are a group of three, Garima, Shubham, and me, Ahmed.
Hello, hi, I'm Garima. I'm from India, and I'm really happy to see you all here. I hope we present well today.
Hello, this is Shubham. I'm still in Cairo. I'm glad to see Christoph today.
So can you see the screen now?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so starting with the table of contents by introducing the city, then the water system in Qusair, and its relationship with tourism. The problem statement we identified through analyzing the existing situation, then introducing our areas of intervention, guidelines map, and pilot projects. So going quickly through the geographical location of the city of Qusair, one of the 7 cities shaping the Red Sea Governorate, almost 600 kilometers from Cairo, sits between Safaga and Marsa Alam, and almost 200 kilometers away from Qina. Today, the population of Qusair is around 50,000 inhabitants. During our study visit in Qusair, we were asked to do a cognitive map to think how do we identify the city through our observations, and it was quite challenging, but we came up to identify Qusair with its ecological boundaries represented in the Red Sea and the natural wadis, its cultural significance within the socio-economic context of the city, and of course tourism. So we took a step back to understand the spatial dynamics of the city and how it transformed through its significant history. The line represents the Red Sea, and those are the natural wadis shaping the ecological boundaries of the city. The beginning was Al-Qusair al-Qadim, which started at the head of a coral bay that served as a port. The 2 main periods of occupation and use of the port are the Roman and the late Ayyubid to the Mamluk period. It's believed that in the 16th century, when Portuguese started to dominate the global trade in order to secure it, they destroyed Al-Qusair al-Qadim, as it was one of the potential threats. Excavations of the remaining ruins discovered in 1978 by a team of archaeologists from the Oriental Institute in Chicago, as the first group mentioned. Then, searching for alternative for freshwater resource, they settled in front of the natural port here, getting its major role as a cosmopolitan port to serve the large pilgrim caravans going to the Holy Land of Mecca in Saudi Arabia. In order to protect them, as the first group mentioned, the Ottoman Sultan Selim II in 1571 gave the order to build the Ottoman fort in Qusair to provide more protection and security. Here till the year of 1900 or the beginning of the 20th century, around 1912.
Like
Yeah.
to elaborate here. Yes, sir. So what we see here is that earlier, trade and pilgrimage was a key activity for the growth of the city when it flourished. And but after the establishment of the Suez Canal, Qusair lost its importance as a major trade port. So that is when first time there was discontinuity in Qusair's growth, and then Phosphate Company was established as a way to rejuvenate the city. And next slide. And we see a definite pattern and more cohesive growth in Qusair. But then again, due to sustainability, the Phosphate Company stopped functioning. Next slide. And we again see discontinuity and sort of fragmentation in the development of the city. So what we basically observed from the morphology of the city, and this is how it looks today. In the 2000s, tourism was first initiated as an important activity for Qusair, and resorts were developed majorly towards the north of the city, away from the historic core. And Fanadir is that but since the nature of these economic activities was mostly not sustainable, we see a disorientation, discontinuity, and fragmentation in the different parts of the cities, like the city port, historic core, the informal settlements, etc. Ahmed, we can continue now.
Thank you, Garima. Here is the base map of Qusair showing the ecological boundaries of the city. You can see from the north, Wadi al-Qusair al-Qadim, then Wadi al-Ambagi, the main and the most significant wadi in the city in terms of its location and the relationship with the city. Going south with Wadi al-Aswad and then Wadi Zraib. Then, for better understanding of the wadis and the Red Sea relationship with the city, here are some sections. For instance, the one below, showing the relationship between Wadi al-Ambagi and Wadi al-Qusair al-Qadim. And the one on top is showing the relationship between the Red Sea and Wadi al-Ambagi. Then going to the water system in the city, we try to understand the water cycle in the city of Qusair, both the natural and the man-made cycle. As you may know that Qusair has no source for natural fresh water, and groundwater is limited available in specific areas. The only source of fresh water is the pipe coming from Qina and Safaga to Qusair, 200 kilometers from Qina and 80 kilometers from Safaga. It's not pumping all weekdays. In addition to that, it's the water source for the residential zones only. So considering the resorts, the only source of water is the sea water. So as you can see here, they are depending on the desalination plant. For instance, Radisson Blu and Movenpick are sharing one desalination plant between them, and Flamenco is having its own desalination plant. For Fanadir Resort, the oldest and the closest to the historic core of Qusair, almost has a kind of parasitical relationship to the city in terms of water, that it's depending on the city's desalination plant, which is something to think about. And here, as you can see, the organic waste or wastewater from housing settlements in the city, along with brine water from desalination plant, are going directly to the Red Sea, which, as you can imagine, has a very bad impact on the marine life, especially with the coral reefs. So Qusair indeed is suffering from water scarcity, and there are challenges such as irrigation in resorts, brine water, virtual water, and so forth. These pictures we took during our visit, showing how the local community are getting their water, and it's quite difficult situation to handle in daily life. Here are some charts and the diagrams discussed before with the first group, showing the domestic uses of water and water consumption in the resorts. So coming to the problem statement we identified for the city as a complex, it will be that the local community's lack of quality of life due to water scarcity, education, and unemployment is not being addressed by tourism because of the lack of dialogue between the natural, cultural, tourism resources. And the questions to address in our vision, how to approach local water resources, where to place tourism in Qusair and in a way that support the water system, what to do with existing tourism, and how to integrate nature-based solutions. So how can we introduce this dialogue between the natural, cultural, tourism resources? In order to do that, our areas of intervention will emphasize on Wadi al-Ambagi, the most significant natural wadi in the city, Fanadir Resort, and going deep with its relationship with the historic core and the informal settlements. Here you can see our focus area for interventions. Fanadir Resort is here, the historic core, Wadi al-Ambagi course, and this is the mouth of Wadi, and these are the informal settlements. So to elaborate more with the vision we are proposing, the issues concerning the interventions are comprised into three issues. The first issue that Fanadir Resort, as we mentioned before, almost has a parasitical relationship with the city in terms of water, and it's depending on the desalination plant of the city. The second issue is the fact that Fanadir is a bit paradoxical. It's quite close to the historic core comparing to the other resorts, which are around 8 kilometers from the city. But at the same time, Fanadir Resort is connected from the historic core. The third issue is that the informal settlements are lacking the proper infrastructure that could introduce a better quality of life in terms of water and sustainable local economy. In order to deal with that, sorry.
I would like to add something here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also an important issue is that, as we discussed before, that the lack of sustainable economy, and that the city has always been run, it has always been a business that has been running the city and the people, not the other way, like not the people being involved in running the business. So that is also going to be one of our focuses about choosing the informal settlements and more closely involving the people.
Yes, so in order to deal with these issues, we are recommending to create a more symbiotic urban dialogue between the natural, cultural, tourism resources, where Fanadir Resort could give water to the city and become more connected to the historic core through the shoreline or the corniche, responding to the special dynamics of the city. Also introducing urban activities and integrating the wadi within the urban fabric. Then speaking about the three areas of intervention, starting with analyzing Wadi al-Ambagi for better understanding for its downstream and the flash flood impact on the city. So here is a modeled flood map for the downstream area of the Wadi. Here is Fanadir Resort. Here is the historic core of the city. And in the red color are the informal settlements.
Watch out the time, Ahmed. Huh? Watch out the time.
Yeah. Hold.
Because we want to hear the new proposal properly. Huh? Not
yes,
very
sure. Okay, very quickly. These are showing the Wadi course and its relation to the surroundings, the topography, the surface textures, and the metallic mines, etc. Here you can see sea flood simulations showing hypothetical scenarios of the flash flood in the city. Again, with the Wadi within the ecological boundaries of Qusair and its relationship with Wadi Hammamet, which has a significant value in terms of ecology and cultural tourism. The second zone is the informal settlements, which are comprised into 3 areas based on data by GOBB. The first is called Kallahin with 5,000 inhabitants, Al-Awaina with almost 5,000 inhabitants, and Al-Ghurf with 3,200 inhabitants. So the population in the informal settlements is around 13,000 inhabitants, which means it's almost a quarter of the total population of the city. And they are lacking, as we mentioned before, the proper infrastructure, and they are struggling for a decent life. Then to end with analyzing with Fanadir Resort, as we mentioned, it's one of the oldest and the closest to the historic core. Fanadir has one of the hotspots in terms of coral reefs and diving activities, which gave its house reef a very significant value in the city. Here showing the water consumption for irrigation per day. So Garima can elaborate quickly the SWOT analysis and the vicious cycle before going to the guidelines map.
Yeah. So the strengths of the sites are that because of the presence of the ecological natural boundaries, Wadis and the Red Sea, they act as a strength, and the close proximity with Wadi Hammamet, which is an important touristic spot. And there is a diversity of land uses and potentials in the terms that informal settlements, this Fanadi resort, a strong seashore line, and also the connection between Qusair and Kena through the Qusair-Kena highway. There's a strong presence of the local community in the form of the housing settlements, and also the coral house reefs of Fanadi resort, which are a distinctive spot in the city. The weaknesses is definitely Fanadi's dependency on the city for its desalination plant, the existing infrastructure, weak infrastructure of the informal settlements, and also even though the Fanadi resort is close to the historic core as compared to the other resorts, but it is disconnected and lacks physical as well as functional connection. The opportunities here are that due to the natural features, there's scope for nature-based tourism, and the juxtaposition of the informal settlements and tourism gives the opportunity for the participation in sustainable cultural tourism. And
sorry, Garima, you have less than 5 minutes, you guys.
Yes, I'll wrap it up. And for the threats, there's flash floods. Again, that over-tourism can pose a threat to the marine life. And also because of the lack of education and other opportunities, there's threat for migration and gentrification in the city. Next slide. Yes, based on our site, the 2 vicious cycles is that if the tourism is promoted, it could lead to further problems, as in pressure on the natural resources. So here, the goal would be to make tourism as a tool for development rather than making it a goal. And the other is that if the Fanadi resort uses its own desalination plant, it would generate more brine water and further pressurizing the natural resources. So the solution here would be using agroforestry and the wastewater for agriculture.
So the guidelines map, as you can see, that based on what we proposed in our vision to create a more symbiotic urban dialogue between natural cultural tourism resources. So first, we are introducing a connection of urban activities between Fanadi Resort and the historic core, which include cultural, commercial, public beach, and mixed-use zones along the Corniche. Also emphasizing on the shipbuilding craft which the local community can depend on for the local economy, allowing upgrading the quality of life of the informal settlements, providing job opportunities and sustainable economy. The second action is introducing walkable green tissue along the shoreline as a new green edge of Qusair by transforming the mouth of Wadi, as you can see here, into a space combining horticulture and urban activities, linking the historic core of the city with Fanadir. The third action is using solar desalination that help producing water for Fanadir, reducing the negative impact of brine water by introducing agricultural solutions to fill the need of the local community, instead having their own goods, their own food from Cairo or Kenya. And Shubham will explain later the techniques of solar desalination and agriculture.
No, later. There's no
okay.
later. There's no later.
So here is the master plan showing the connection of the urban activities between Fanadir and the historic core. So commercial zone, here public beach with existing cabins, most of them supervised by the municipality, are not used couple of years ago because the lack of the funding for maintenance, and the rest of the cabins which belong to the local inhabitants are in good shape. Also entertainment zone with existing sports field, as you can see here, readapting and reuse abandoned structures as a cultural zone. Here is the green tissue in the mouth of Wadi Lambagi, integrating the Wadi somehow into the special dynamics of the city, linking historic core with the promenade to Fanadir. Here is the industrial zone of the shipbuilding craft, and here is the desalination, the solar desalination plant close to Fanadir with area of 3,000 square meters, and here are the proposed zones for agriculture. Okay, here you can see the proposed solutions for grey water treatment in the informal settlements using bioretention system techniques, and for Fanadir Resort with the solar desalination plant utilizing the brine water in agriculture. Here is the main shot we did for the proposal. Fanadir Resort is here with its house reef, new connection to the historic core, introducing the urban activities along the promenade. Here is the green tissue in Qusair integrating the Wadi within the spatial dynamics of the city. Here is the solar desalination close to Fanadir Resort, the shipbuilding craft zone, the commercial zone, the public beach, and the entertainment zone with the existing sport facilities, the cultural zone, reusing the abandoned structures. I hope it's clear, but now Shubham can elaborate more with the solar desalination and the agricultural solutions very quickly. Shubham, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah.
So here we are focusing on the renewable source of energy for the desalination. So we are using concentrated solar power with the help of parabolic solar trough, as you can see in the picture. We have a shortage, we can see in the table. In 2001, they had a shortage of 323,000 of meter cube per day in the Red Sea coast, and for projected in 2020, they will have a shortage of 610,000 meter cube per day for the Red Sea coast. So solar energy in thermal desalination process is one of the most promising applications for the renewable energies. And as Egypt has a fair amount of this global radiation, so it can be harnessed for desalination. So you can see in the this flow chart, we are using the desalination techniques. These are the different desalination techniques which are used, and under the heat, we have a MSF and MED, that multi-stage flash desalination and multi-effect desalination. So we are focusing on MED, multi-effect desalination technique, which is one of the most recent and efficient methods. And this is it on the right top. We can see the schematic diagram showing its workability. So these parabolic troughs will use solar energy to produce
Need to
steam.
wrap up, yeah,
Yes.
Shubham. Need to
Yes.
wrap up.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So Shubham, about the agricultural
Okay.
solutions.
So
very
we
quick.
will be using the desalination plant for producing 150 meter cubes of water per day, and out of which 70 to 90 would be used by Fanadir, and the rest of it will be used for the production of crops. And one greenhouse having an area of around 800 square meter can produce 75 kg per square meter of vegetables in a day. And also the solar plant is helping to reduce the carbon footprint, as 1 square meter can reduce can avoid 150 to 250 kilograms of CO2 emissions. So coming on to the last, we are using solar field of 2600 square meters with the help of 400 square meter of desalination plant to produce 150 square meters of water per day. And this will be 60 to 90 meter cubes of water can irrigate 40 to 25 seawater greenhouses every day. And then the brine water will be sent to the evaporation ponds, which can be used to produce different chemicals which are used for treating desalination water and also like for the production of salt, table salt.
Thank you, Shubham.
Thank you.
Here's the references, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We hope we didn't go too far.
Thank you, guys. So I will now turn to our distinguished guests.
Also, for the second time, really, I really highly appreciate the comprehensiveness and the very sincere data collection and analysis. I just have a question or comment about the Up Valley areas. I mean, the further to the west. I mean, and I have a question here. What is the frequency of flash floods that threaten the city? I mean, is it yearly or more than that? Every 5 years, every 10 years? I mean,
The frequency is about once in 10 years.
once in 10
And
years.
the maximum, like the approximate rainfall that the area receives is about 7 millimeters, and for a flash flood to occur, it should be about it occurs when it reaches beyond 50 mm.
So the risk of flash flood is not that high.
It's not that high, but we
And it could be mitigated.
Yeah, and it could be mitigated.
So my question here, I mean, regarding the water concentration up valley on the yearly basis, could it, with some kind of water catchment or simple damming, whatever, could it sustain some simple agriculture activity on the high valley area or not?
We already built three.
Yeah,
doctor. Sorry, Ahmed. They already built.
Yeah, I studied about that, but the rainfall is not sufficient for the agriculture because it is only 7 mm per year. So it cannot be used entirely for a good amount of agriculture.
So it cannot sustain kind of economic. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, Dr. Tarek. As far as I know, the government already built 3 preventing and storage dams. Right, Ahmed?
Yes.
Quite recent ones. I think it's mainly it's not really concrete dams. It's
earthwork.
It's, I think, was built starting 2018. So it's really very recent ones.
And I would like to add something. I also gone through a study that the brackish water from the Wadi if stored, can be used for irrigation of the native plants like acacia and henna. And this is what we are trying to do in the green tissue that we proposed on the Wadi Mouth.
Very good. This is really my point regarding this question about can we create a new habitat, a new node in the upper valley, so it can serve many purposes like simple agriculture, maybe Bedouin tourism, maybe just to have another development node rather than the extending along the beach. This is
Yes,
my
it could be, yes.
It could be. Yeah, but it may be some capital, some inputs, and boosting to create this node. But I think it can make a big difference to the city structure, to the city economy in a way or another.
Yes, sure.
Yeah.
If you are having the fund.
Yes, definitely.
No, sorry. We don't have the number yet. So we need to check the numbers. I think Ahmed ElAdawy can advise on that. But whether the amount of water that can be stored can really support this kind of agriculture or not. So you cannot really jump into answering it can be. No, you need to check the numbers and data first and then respond. Right?
I'm responding regarding what happened in Wadi al-Kuwih, 30 kilometers from Wadi al-Ambagi. So maybe it could be relevant.
Yeah.
And also, I went through the studies that I'm sorry that I did not include them, but I went through studies that talked about native agriculture and how agriculture practices when tribes used to live here, and species like acacia, tortilis, and henna, they are desert. They're fit for the desert environment, and they can use the brackish water from the wadi for their growth. So it is possible, and definitely we need numbers, and we'll go through that in the next stage.
I think well designed ecology or complex of ecologies in this distant up valley desert area could diversify for much the tourism market, and give another destination and add some maybe few nights more or whatever, or diversify the destination itself. Yes, good. Thank you.
Okay, Christoph.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much for your presentation. And it's a pleasure to see that also in that time, this times now, you can work as a team, and you can elaborate quite interesting and qualified planning and analysis, etc. results. So I have there's one maybe question you mentioned with your analysis, with your SWOT, that gentrification is a threat. This I didn't really understood so far, because I would say they need gentrification. So gentrification is not always bad. And with your measures, you will, or you would, initiate also some gentrification. It's more the challenge how to guide, how to organize the development. This is just a small point. Then I had the question if it would be possible for your guidelines and also your projects to connect it a little bit stronger with the historic core. Maybe this is also depending on the main focus you have, but I think this could be maybe stronger integrated. I really like what you called a master plan. For me, it's still more a guideline plan, but this is not so important. So questions would be for me also, do you have any pilot projects, or what are the priority projects, and maybe also what are the steps for your strategy? And connected with this, I see there also the challenge of what you should put into consideration when you're going now more to the more detailed projects and measures. How you integrate the technical measures Shubham presented into the landscape and into the existing urban fabric. Now they were just presented like with some technical facts and of course with some images. But I think they need to be an integrated part of the whole development. This would be my points and questions at the moment. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Alaa?
Well, first of all, I would like to really congratulate the effort that was put into this. I particularly liked the historic development sheets that were shown at the very beginning of the presentation, as well as all of the analyses that were undertaken. I'm not sure whether these are field research or gathered from available sources from a distance. But if it's a field research and done in such circumstances, I will actually also double my congratulations to the team. I have a very minor comment considering the informal settlements. Basically, a strategy was put together to introduce green housing, as far as I understood. So what I can see from a distance now, not really visiting those neighborhoods, that this is maybe an imposed kind of approach, a strategic approach onto those urban settlements. I'm not sure whether the solutions can actually also come from within those neighborhoods to consider opportunities, spatial and also community opportunities within those settlements to be somehow appreciated, and then base the approach, the strategic approach on such opportunities. Another also very minor point, which is basically on the public beach that is existing and being appreciated also in the master plan. At last we have one, but maybe this can be also better integrated into the master plan and not better appreciated as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Ahmed ElAdawy, comment?
Yes, Professor. Do you hear me?
Ahmed ElAdawy is a hydrologist from Mansoura University and teaching with us.
Yes. So Professor, I've write my comment on the quantity of water, but also I have another comment on the solar field. So I'm not sure if we can propose like a big solar field in the area where the energy issue in Egypt is not so high. I'm not sure if we can choose this solar field project for our proposal here.
Sorry, Dr. Ahmed, I didn't get the question.
Yeah. Actually, in Egypt, we may not have this priority of having more energy because we have enough energy now. So if you are proposing a very big solar field, can you convince the government of funding it or so on? Rather than we can like choose some small projects. If we can adopt solar energy or something, we can go for small projects of solar energy. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I really like the way that you have like briefed the analysis in a very short time, and then you went in details in your vision and in your strategy, which was very clear. And I'm very glad also that you went all through all these details so that you can have more comments to integrate within your final proposal. My minor comment only is that like I know you have done a lot of efforts, like going all through these kind of different zones existing within COSAIR and focusing on the flashback area, a little bit on the informal settlements and the historical area. But in the in the slide, for example, you are showing us now. I have the I don't know. I have the impression that you are dealing as if COSAIR are separate zones. So we have this kind of historical area alone, and then we have the agriculture zone in Rex to Fanadir, and then we have these informal settlements at the middle. But I mean, your vision needs to strengthen more, or to on the integration, on the spatial integration of these different zones, especially that you have proposed so many technical installations, so many activities like the agriculture here, and not very well spatially connected with the other activities going on with the COSAIR. So I think your strategy in your final presentation need also to like advocate this, or to integrate this in more details, how this is physically and spatially designed. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Asmaa.
Response.
Yes, there is one thing regarding the energy requirement. I calculated it with the help of a case study. That energy produced would be sufficient to run the desalination plant. So it would be only to run the desalination plant. So that's why it was proposed.
Sorry, Shubham. The Ahmed point was that now Egypt had to undergo this energy scheme where they were really into producing more energy than we already need. So now we are in a very weird situation where the capacity of production of energy in Egypt is surpassing by significant percentage what we already need. Then Ahmed would question the logic if you would really go for another type of energy production, like solar energy, at the time where you have already a surplus in energy in your national grid. So this is, in a way, the question.
So it was because it is a renewable source, and it has a it has no carbon footprint, and it is also reducing the CO2 production yearly. That's why we used this for the self-sustaining desalination plant.
Yeah, we will think about that. Yeah.
Dr. Nabil, can I comment on this?
Yes.
I know that, yes, I mean, the national capacity is about from 2025 over the existing demand. Yes, at the short run, we can consider, I mean, we can appreciate the idea of not making a solar field or something. But for the long run, I think the principle now is regarding the water systems and the energy system should be off Nile, off grid. I mean, this is a principle at the long run.
Yes.
At the long run. So it could be, I mean, considered, investigated, cost-wise, and so. But the question with the solar field is it's land consuming. I mean, it's as a land use component. Yeah. So and we have a kind of a coastal development that attached to the coast, and so it's we should not compete on the land by the soil unless we can make it a little bit further in the depths or on the west. So this is my comment. Okay.
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 Hello.
In response of what Christoph mentioned about the gentrification, I totally agree with that. And about the stronger connection with the historic core, I think we all agree with that. But the idea that, as Dr. May mentioned earlier, that every group is focusing on a specific area. So I don't know if we can, because the first group is focusing more on the historic core of the city. So I don't know if we can integrate that.
No, yeah, but every but
yeah. May I add something to that?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so I would like to get back to what also Asmaa said. So the different neighborhoods or the different areas look a little bit isolated. But I think in your vision or in your main approach, you should focus more on what are the common elements of the development. So yeah, so what are the common elements which connect the different parts, and what are the different specific characteristics of these different neighborhoods or quarters or areas, and how they also can constitute a comprehensive fabric and structure with the common elements and the specific elements, and in which relation they are, of course, and all of that in the frame of the natural landscape and topography, to bring these different elements better and more integrated together.
I'm sorry for interrupting. I just want to respond to what Dr. Alaa mentioned about imposing the green approach in the informal settlement. It's more for the water treatment. So this is our focus. It's not a green approach in itself, but it's focusing more on how we deal with the gray water and the brine water from the solar desalination plant.
Okay.
And of course, thank you, Dr. Ali.
Thank you so much for your comments.
Okay, hello guys.
Stop sharing,
nice to meet you. Yeah, nice to meet you. We are the team of four students. I'm River from north of Iraq, south of Kurdistan of Iraq, and also Summer is with us from Port Said, Deb from Calcutta, India, and also Shriya from Bangalore, India. And thank you so much for your time. Yeah, and this is our vision, our proposal, COSAIR, Educational Hub toward Community Inclusiveness, and later on we will put more elaboration and the base map of the city of COSAIR, and in relation to it is like ecological system boundaries. We can see here, this is our city, COSAIR. Can you see my pointer, by the way? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And the city, and this is the Wadi Qusair Al Qadim, the Wadi Ambagi, the Wadi Al Asyut, and the connection between the wadis here at this point. Both of the wadis meet, and also the Wadi Al Asyut with the meet with the Wadi Ambagi here at this point. And also we have several ruins, not only one ruin. We have the ruins here, archaeological site, and also above the Wadi Nakhil we have other ruin, and also here we have the third ruin. We have these two mining. We have these two phosphate mining center here. First here to 22 and 27, and also the second one here. And also the important thing is this is the factory, the old factory, and later on we will elaborate more about this factory. And we have also 9 diving centers in the city, and also the railroad, I mean the old railroad to the factory, and also the connection, the main roads from the Qusair to Hurghada, to the northern cities of the Red Sea and Egypt, and also to the Marsal Alam and the other southern city, and also the road to the Nile and to the city of Qina. I will go to the next slide. As a collective memory, the city is quite colorful and has a strong potential to develop in terms of urban development or tourism, or even for the term of the cultural development is very, very strong. So we put several examples in this collective memory. As you can see, the factory the Ottoman port, I mean, as a part of the historic layer of the city, and the vintage style of the city generally, the desalination water plants, the bazaar, also the example of the green local houses in the city. And as if we this is the first glance. Later on, Dip Kumar will give us more elaboration about this. And this is shortly. I would like to talk about the strong, weak, opportunity, threat points regarding the city. Of course, there are much more than strong points, but now we are going to elaborate what is related to our vision, what serves our proposal. Strong points that Qusair has, as my friends also mentioned, has many urban fabric layers, and also is one of the red coast cities, and the recent influx of the tourism into the city. This are the strong points, and also the weak points are the quality of education, which is not high, and the fresh water is not sufficient, and the connectivity in the city is not in a good condition, and the tourism sector is not supporting the local people in the cities. They go in a two different way. Tourism has not been integrated into the economic development of the city, and the opportunity. There are a lot of opportunity. If we talk about the opportunities that can just change the tourism into a more sustainable tourism, and we have many different important sites like the factory, the ports, and also also we can also develop the existing salination plants. And for the stress, like we have the lack of the permanent job opportunities, like the brine water from the desalination plant, bleaching of coral reefs, and under-maintained historical core and phosphate waste polluting the Red Sea, and so on. I would like to give the time to the more important things regarding the data to have a clear vision about the city. This is the data regarding the tourism, that the tourism increased. I mean, for the last few years, tourism dramatically increased in the city. This is the revenue of the tourism, and the number of arrivals. This is only the airports, arrival to the airport in Egypt, not only from the boundaries. And what's so important, I would like to mention that the expenditure of the education, because later on we are talking about our intervention, which is quite relevant to the education, is quite high, and the expenditure of the Egyptian government to education is twice as health expenditure. And this is the example of the 3 years, and this is the last year that it was like nearly $30 billion the expenditure of the public education. And Qusair, at the first glance, I would like to ask Summer and my friends to give further details. Later on, I will put more details and elaboration about the other slides. Yeah.
Okay, hello. About the water consumption, we started to study the difference between the water consumption in each of the resource, and also the comparison between the water consumption for a local person and for a tourist in Qusair. We found that the tourists consume about 12 times more than the local person in Qusair. And also for the marine life in Qusair, the marine life is and the coral reefs are suffering so much in Qusair because of the bleaching, because of the bad use of the coral reefs, and the high rise of the sea temperature. Okay, next slide, please.
Okay. The history of the factory. This is the history of the factory. Summer, you can elaborate more about this.
I think this is the phosphate company through the years. Our main focus area is a phosphate company, so we made a glance about how it changed along the years. But I think we can skip it to go to the more important things. Yeah. After our analysis, we skipped a lot of them because we don't want to spend so much time about the data. We came out by a problem statement, which is that Qusair, depending on one main source of economy, which is not supporting the city development as a city, and its natural resources have served the tourism industry, but the income is exclusive for the investors. So we started to study several vicious cycles. Some of them are related to marine life tourism, and some of them about the cultural tourism, the agriculture, and the education. And we started to think how to break these cycles and how to make COSER as a more sustainable environment. Next, please. So this will lead us to four main points. The first point, that's things that we should reduce, which is brine water, marine tourism, water consumption, and environmental impact. The second point is things that we should emphasize, which is the sustainable tourism, cultural significance, and tourism and community development. Things should be introduced to the city, which is agriculture, cultural tourism, quality education, sustainable water cycle, and things that should be considered, like water issues, community participation, and economic contribution inside COSER. And this led us to our vision, which we need to introduce a new socioeconomic development strategy, which can be based on education, can be integrated into the city in order to improve the quality of life. So here we have our proposed vision cycle. The cycle would be education that would lead to city and community development, and then a higher rate of employment, and then more income, and then more quality of living condition. We will achieve our vision on different scales. The first scale is a micro scale for the phosphate company and Northern Resort, and the second scale would be the Golden Triangle and Red Sea area. The third one would be the Egypt and internationally. And we try to create vision year cycle about the education, community development, public tourism, and tourism. Next slide, please. So we started to think about each part of our focus area, which would be the phosphate company and the Northern Resource. I'm not going to go through all of these, but the most important things in this slide would be the challenges that we need to address. And the phosphate company, we need to address a new economic activities that provide a source of profit that a resort can provide, because it was a plan from the government to transform this phosphate company into a resort area. And for the Northern Resort, we need to make a combination between the existing tourism and our new vision for the city. And these are the water cycles in the phosphate company, and moving it as an example for the Northern Resort.
Okay.
Next, please. So the second part of our vision, it would be planning and design. So we are trying to introduce a sustainable education scenario that works as a main driver for the development in COSER. We started to focus on three main scenarios. The first scenario would be socially oriented universities. The second one would be environmentally oriented universities. The third scenario would be economically oriented university. After analyzing and evaluating the three scenarios, we thought that we would go for an environmentally oriented university scenarios, which is education through environmental literacy and first-hand experiences in nature, and a human and nature environment as a living laboratory for sustainable learning. So we are proposing to implement a marine ecology institute which can be implemented in the phosphate complex. Next, please. Yeah. About the third phase of our strategy would be the implementation. For the phosphate company, we started to see the different boundaries within the 500 kilometers for the education system. So we found 5 public university, 1 higher education, 1 international university, and 1 non-governmental and non-profitable university, which will be implemented in the next few years. And we started to see the international possible connections for the marine life institutes around the world. So we found that and divided them to 3 different categories. The first categories would be that is important for our institute. The second one would be the more important. The third one, it would be with the strongest connection, as it would have the more numbers of the institution around the world, like USA, India, and Russia, and Brazil. And also we started to think about the educational program plan that we need to provide in this institute. So we thought that we need to provide maybe four types of education. So the first part would be primary education to school student and different and it would be integrated in this process. Also community education, national higher education, which can be a cooperation project with the universities that I mentioned before, and the fourth one would be international higher education with the countries that we were talking about. Next, please. After that, we started to think how this will this implementation would affect the historic core and the northern resort as a part of focus area. So we took an example, the historic core that we need. We can propose that the deteriorated building in the historic core can work as dorms for the students that will come to the this institute. So we have here maybe a plan how we can get an income from this and how can this income be distributed to different aspects. So if we have the two stakeholders, maybe the house owner and a partner, development partners, they can work together to achieve a target, which is renovating a historical building, and this would lead to monthly income and then yearly income, and this income can be distributed after that to the house owner and to the development partner, and part of this income can go to the community development, and part of that can go to the house maintenance in order to keep the area and the historical building. And also for the northern resort, we thought that we can divide our interest in this area. So some of the needs would be supported by the resort and the historic core. Some of the needs can be supported only by historic core, and some of the needs can be supported by the northern resource. And in this process, we can add some local economy project for the people there. I love it. Next. Now Shreya will focus more on the fourth phase of the implementation part.
Yeah, a part of sustainable strategy for Al Qusair was to implement carousel, where we can produce safe drinking water from the seawater, and it's quite cheap and it is easy to mount on the floor, and these are very adaptable for hot climate and arid regions. The next slide, please. Yeah, the other strategy to include a lot of agriculture, small scale agriculture in Al Qusair can be by aquaponics, and they have a lot of fishery also in this part of Egypt. So maybe by having a place where we can include growing fishes and growing vegetables sustainably would make a lot of economical and social development of the city, and we can generally grow most of the types of vegetables in this through this method, like cabbage, broccoli, and cucumbers, etc. Yeah, the next slide. Another strategy also could be constructed wetland with horizontal subsurface flow, and this is where the water flows horizontally in the ground, and based on papers I read in Egypt, this works quite well, and this can be implemented in the residential area as well as in the phosphate company to reuse the grey water and have a more sustainable water balance in the city. Yeah, the next slide. So now implementing all these types and to propose a water cycle, we thought that the carousel can recreate fresh water, and the aquaponics will recycle the water in the whole system separately, and the wetland can reuse the grey water. So this is a cycle, and based on the calculations, per hectare we can have around 3,000 carousels, and which produces around 6,000 liters a day, and that makes a lot of difference in a place like Qusair. And even through aquaponics, we can produce around pounds of 12,000 pounds of fishes per year and around 2 million heads of lettuce in a year. So these strategies should be implemented in the residential area and as well as in the phosphate company. And a certain strategy like aquaponics and the wetland can be also included in the northern resort area. Yeah, the next slide. This vision can be funded through three types of, any three types of funding. Probably the first one can be with the local government, with the local budget. And the second scenario is where local investors and the banks come into play. And the third scenario will be with the local government and the local investors having a combination. Each has a pros and cons in its own way. I think the best would be to have scenario 3 where we can have community ownership and traditional with no innovation action needed. And the city would also get an income share. Yeah, the next slide.
Yeah, the guideline maps. So this is the boundary, and I think Kumar, you can go with more elaborations. Yes.
Yes, based on the findings of my colleagues, we came to forming these guideline maps. Basically, the first map is showing the region of the phosphate factory, and the second one is showing the urban density in and around the area of the factory, and the third one is showing how this facility is connected to the rest of the city. Now, as on the fourth map, we can see that in existing state, there is the two entrances are at antipodes with each other, making the distance travel quite long and boring. So to break that, could you guys go to the next slide? Yeah. So to break that, we propose one entry point from the middle, so that access can be made from the middle as well and break the monotony of the travel. And based on these, we divided the plot into 3 phases of interventions. And now primarily we're focusing on the first phase, where we showed the zoning for different uses, which is marked in the slides. And finally, to finish it all up, I would just say that the new public space that will be created will gather both locals and internationals together, and providing a space for traditional and national events. Also, the fragmented building blocks. Could you go to the next slide, please?
Okay, I think I can elaborate more about this. This is the factory, the first. I mean the complex of the factory. This is the southern part of the factory. You can see the blocks quite fragmented, and with our proposal, we want to connect all of the blocks by putting a strong functions which is related to each other, and also this is the 3 open spaces that we are going to suggest. This is the open lab that everything can be studied practically near the sea, near the reefs. And this is the open space which gathers both students and the local people from the city. And also this is the second open space which is related to the campus. And also we have the administration building here. We also want to adaptive reuse some of the old deteriorated houses surrounding the factory area, which is the settlement, and also the historic core, which is here, doesn't appear in the city, and we also want to adaptive reuse all the deteriorated houses and renovate them and using as an accommodation unit for the students and the professors that maybe come to the new institution, in the new marine life ecology institution. And also, this is the phosphate waste. Also, we want to mention that there is a huge phosphate waste that we also mentioned the amount here. The details can be found there. But we want to also reuse and recycle this the waste, and we also study this waste too. And this is the we don't want to take a lot of time. This is our intervention and our proposal. And of course, there are more and more information in the panels. I think if someone wants to, there can be. You can also find a lot of more information about that. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Riba.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Dr. Tarek, would you like to?
Yes, I can give just quick comments. I mean, there is another presentation, or this is the last one?
This is the last one.
Okay. Yeah, really, as exactly the past presentation, the presentation is very interesting. I like very much this kind of vicious circle analysis. It's a nice approach to handle these issues. And in fact, this vicious circle analysis, I think it needs to be supported by quantitative indicators. And give an example, for the diving business. I mean, it's very important and indicative to include the data of along the last 20 years, how much the diving business in Hurghada has deteriorated. I mean, regarding the returns, the economic returns of the diving business. Is it deteriorate? It's very convincing to know, because I mean, the decision-making process doesn't take action unless there is a clear quantitative indicator. The economic analysis is very interesting and nice, but I think we should add, it may be already included, a kind of approximate or estimated cost of every proposed action or project or whatever. The concept of the university or the educational facility is very, very promising. Let us remember the Berlin University in El Gona. So it's very good. I have but just another operational or management recommendation about this very nice and good and diligent work. How it could feed back the local administration in Qusair, the Tourism Development Authority, whatever. So if there is a possibility to have a kind of compacted presentation in Arabic, and another conference call or whatever with the local administration, maybe the head of the Qusair Markaz, and the one from the TDA, Tourism Development Authority, and one NGO, to feed them back with all this very important and educative and illuminating concepts and ideas. Okay, and get the feedback also in the same time.
Okay, Doctor. So, Christoph, would you?
Yes, may I?
Yes. Right.
Hello. Okay. Thank you for the work, and of course all the basics we saw. This is very clear, but I would like to go directly to your vision and concept. So there, I'm much more critical there. So you started very promising with the title "Towards Community Enclosure." So there I would expect then a real integrated approach. But then I would like to raise a question. A university in Qusair would be a total new element. And at the moment, Qusair has no potentials in any way to run a university. So, and the community of Qusair, so the competences they have, the skills they have, they maybe can work some very minor, do some very minor jobs in the university, like security or in some shops or cleaning or something like this. But there's no, what are the potentials which are there that a university should be at Qusair? This you should argue, and there you should argue, or I would propose that you should argue from the perspective of the local potentials we have in Qusair, and also from the national perspective. So if there would be a national investment for new universities, are there good criteria to invest, even if it's public money or private money? Why I should invest for let's say educational hub and university and science activities in Qusair? So this should be good arguments and convincing, and then you have let's say maybe a strong scenario or a very a vision which is maybe a strong wish, and then I think this aspect of integration. I think on the architecture spatial level, so the last perspective I saw, there, of course, I would like to see much more detailed plans to see how it is from the urban development and urban design, urban planning aspect integrated, and then also the social and economic aspects of integration. If something like this is coming to COSIR, what do you need to offer to bring that professors are not just coming and going, that they are also staying, that they have their the center of their lives in COSIR. You must not only offer good living conditions, maybe with a nice house at the seaside, also more culture activities, etc. So what is needed for a university location? And from this then to show and to explain how this is integrated to the existing situation, which you analyze very good. But this question of really fulfilling your promising title towards community enclosure and bringing a university to COSIR, for me, it's still there are a lot of gaps in between. I would see that it's not just a satellite university somewhere which is not connected to the place, and where students and teachers are just coming with their own buses to their closed campus and leaving. We have a lot of university campuses like that on our world, which are brought somewhere, but they are not really connected to the existing situation. This would be a very bad scenario, that the investment for the university is coming, but it's not integrated. So, and this also would mean that the local community doesn't have any benefit, or only very small benefits from it. Yeah. Yeah. This would be maybe the questions or the points I would like to raise for your work.
Thank you, Christoph. Alaa? Dr. Alaa?
Yes, Dr. Nabil. Well, again, congratulating the students for their analysis. Rabah, Samar, Shreya, and Kamar. Thank you very much for all of the group analysis. I also support Christoph's point in this university issue, especially if you're looking at it from a national point of view, and also opening a recently opened university not so far in Al-Garana University. So I would also put a question mark on that proposal as well, an additional question mark, as Christoph has raised it. My only addition to this is that this industrial site, of course, historic in a sense, has been always segregated from the city of COSIR. So I think one is supposed to think about how to break the segregation as breaking the vicious circles picked up here by this very nice group. So I think nowadays this campus of the industrial campus can be very well integrated into the city itself, and can be a part of its development toward the north. Thank you.
Asmaa?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Nabil. Thank you so much for your presentation. Again, I think you have made a lot of efforts like the other two groups. My comment is also connected to what Christoph and Dr. Alaa has just said, that is related to the concept of integrating the university. The main question would be why this huge project would be successful? What guaranteed that it would be even initiated? This is like a very important question to ask in your proposal. And I saw you through your presentation, I think fifth or sixth slide, that you are aware of the different types of education. So you integrated, for example, the community education, technical education for certain installments, and so on. You have, I think, 4 or 5 types of education you mentioned in your presentation, and I really liked this slide. And I thought that would be reflected so much on your scenarios or on your strategy or on your map you showed us. So why are you limiting yourself that education that is only translated or interpreted into university campus? Education through the different levels that you have mentioned could be interpreted all through your master plan into different uses and into different activities. It doesn't have to be a university to respond to this kind of education. This is a comment. Another comment is that even when you mentioned your plan for the university, you were talking as if you have the separate buildings, and you never mentioned how they are connected or how they are integrated within the public spaces existing with the other zones lying behind this industrial zone. So you need really to focus on this kind of social and non-social integration with the educational kind of uses you are proposing. I also, my last comment, I really like also the slide of the funding and budget scenarios, because it also reflects how that you are thinking in different dimensions, and that you are really integrating how this could be functioning and performing. But you need more to focus on like integrating the different ideas and elaborating more how this is interpreted into your physical design. Thank you so much.
But if you would allow me, I would just need to elaborate a little bit about the whether it is a good idea to propose a university or not. As far as we talked to some guys from the tourism sector, as well as we know about the history of the company, the history of phosphate company, and I think this was built into their history, because they were looking for simply skilled workers. So they were never interested in investing in higher education for local community. And I think that left the community with fewer highly educated citizens. And whenever these guys from resorts, touristic resorts, wanted to hire people from the local area, they were not able to do that only in a very small and a very simple skilled jobs, but they were not really able to do that in a better jobs. And in some sense, one would say that higher education can really break this cycle of lack of empowerment for local people. The question yet remains how to do that, or what type of university, whether it would be really a traditional university or something that grows from within the community. I think this is definitely valid, but I think a higher education facility, whatever you call it, I think it's needed to empower and transform local communities and support whatever activities, whether tourism or other activities within Qusayr. Sorry.
Dr. Nabil, can I comment, Alaa?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, regarding the university, maybe we use the term university, but maybe it's just a matter of a small institute that really relates to the local condition, environmental condition. Let us say, for example, for the Ain Shams Institute of Environment, I mean, if it has a kind of a branch there for marine biology, I mean, something that related really that the existing situation there. When I think about this institute or just one faculty of a university, I don't think basically for the local population. Of course, there will be some other, but mainly it can be a kind of an institute that many students comes from many places, maybe from Upper Egypt or whatever, but they came for a specific function and a facility that related to the place and couldn't be offered everywhere. This is my comment. Thank you.
Then it's time for you now, guys, to respond quickly. 10 minutes. We need to wrap up the session.
Yeah, thank you so much. I may need only 3 to 4 minutes to answer. First, thank you, Dr. Tarek, for your comments. Of course, the estimation cost of the proposal is important. We will follow this comment. It's very important. Next, regarding the Christoph comment, was really critical how we can make this inclusiveness happen through the education facilities. Yes, this university would be somehow for both locals and internationals. Those people from outside the country or even inside the Egypt, but from the other cities came to Qusair, they have to find a place for accommodation, which is the neighbors and the quarters of the city. Through this, first step of inclusiveness will happen. Second, we have 3 open spaces. 2 of them is a gathering point between locals and students and professors. So the third thing, through the institution, you have a chance to have a better education for the local people regarding tourism and the foreign languages. By this, they have a better chance to be involved in the tourism and in the better economic development of the city. And of course, if there is a good financial opportunities, no one would leave the city, and all people also will come back for the city. And also, I think also Dr. Alaa, thank you so much for your comments. And also he mentioned the same comment. And also for the comment of the Dr. Asmaa, thank you so much for you. And how they are connected. Of course, we are going to work with the connections of the both of the buildings inside the institute or the university department, and also how they are connected with the city. Also, we are going to emphasize that too. Thank you so much. This is my response. Thank you. And also, I leave the stage for my friends also to answer if they have some elaboration. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes, for me, I think we can integrate the education like we did as a part of the school programs. It can help the primary school students. It can help with the community education. So it's not only inclusive for just an institute and some degrees. It's also about how to can integrate that inside the schools, inside the community. Also, the idea of a university will support a lot of local economies, small projects for the locals. Which can be support the whole economy of the city and then improve different aspects of the city. So it's not only about the accommodation, it's about how to respond to all the student needs. So it's not only about accommodation. And for our proposal, I think we try to combine the public spaces because the people there are lacking the public spaces with the phosphate company, and try to make an integration between them as a whole community that serves the city and it's local, and then also comes the educational purposes. Thank you.
Okay.
And I would just like to add that the education center there was mainly for the first phase of this intervention, which is also mentioned in the slides, that there will be places for future expansion, but mainly this open lab along with the existing buildings are mainly to serve as a place to research marine life, to counter the depletion of coral reefs, and to help maintain the coral reefs of the Qusair region, which is the main focal point to bring in tourists. So to have a better understanding of the marine life and to support the marine life along the coastal lines of Qusair, so that the tourism itself will go on for a longer period of time, because as it stands in future days, the marine life will be severely suffered due to the increased ocean acidification. So the main function of this area is to focus on research on marine life.
Nabil, may I give one more or 3 more sentences? Brief?
4.
Yeah. Just this point with the implementation and integration of a university in Qusseir. So first, of course, it is much better to bring such strong national investments of national importance somewhere to an existing urban situation than just put it somewhere like a new capital. But then there's a challenge how to integrate it and that it is really working. I would also make a question mark, if it's too small, it will not work, because then these people who are working there or who are studying there will not find enough colleagues they would like to meet, and so they will only spend the needed days in that institute or in that place, and then they will go where they have their normal social life. So it is really the question on all the different levels, how to integrate such a new development to the place that it works for the people who are coming there new, so students and teachers, and at the same time for the community, and that both have a benefit. Then it can be very interesting, but it needs to be that way integrated. And for all of the groups, I would like to say today, I would love to invite you now for champagne or juice, but it's not possible because we have Ramadan.
Okay. Then I would really like to thank very much Professor Dr. Tarek Wafik for his joining and for his valuable comments. I think that was really great. Thank you very much, Dr. Tarek.
You're welcome, anytime.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate that. And we thank, of course, Christoph for participating. And we thank Asmaa for the great effort for organizing the meetings and whatever, all the work that she's done. Unfortunately, we missed Dr. Mahmoud Hanafy. He just needed to leave, and as well Hossam Helmy needed to leave. We would also definitely like to thank Dr. Alaa ElHabashy for his very interesting comments and participating, and for his time, definitely for coming and giving us some of his thoughts. I think that was really great. And I definitely like to thank May and Ahmed ElAdawy for the work. And of course, the students, I think you have done much better compared to previous weeks. And this is a really good thing. Advancing is really a good sign. So thank you for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you all the best. And especially thank you to the team from Cairo, and thanks to May and Nabil running this project in this different time.
Okay, thank you.